What's good, kings and queens? Hope everyone's doing alright, staying safe, well hydrated. For this week's video, let's look at a comparison between boxers in their absolute peak and their best performance when they are considered to be out of their primes. To start the list off, George Foreman was one of the most feared champions when he came on the scene. What he lacked of in his prime, he made up for a lot with his sheer strength and power that was hard to combat against from the heavyweights of the 70s and down. Foreman, years later, when he made his comeback and was starting to gain traction at the crack of 1990, he was a lot more patient. His fundamentals dramatically improved. He had an amazing jab. His power was still there, so that kept fighters at bay, thinking twice before making their moves. The cons was he didn't have the best stamina, but if Foreman is able to keep the fight at his own pace, he really put on a show, as seen against Shannon Briggs.
Easy pickings. Good job. George Foreman landing the jab with metronome regularity against Shannon Briggs. Good job. My favorite expert observations when George sits next to me, Roy. This sport is easy if you have a jab.
Very easy if you have a jab.
With the exception of the De La Hoya fight, Trinidad was a complete fighter at welterweight. Good fundamentals, great power, followed up with a good chin. Junior middleweight, he will go on to flourish and carry his power. With the big loss against Bernard Hopkins in the middleweight tournament finals to unify the division, we saw less of Tito. He had a comeback fight in 2002, then to not fight again till 2004, which he completely dominated Ricardo Mayorga. 2004 was a perfect time for him to come back because there could be huge fights to be made between him, De La Hoya, and Shane Mosley. Like Shane Mosley, Tito made a big gamble of fighting Winky Wright in a WBC title eliminator bout. If Tito got past Wright, he would have most likely won against Sam SOLIMAN in the finals to fight Jermaine Taylor in a super match for the middleweight title. That obviously did not happen, and Trinidad suffered his worst defeat.
The aftermath of Trinidad's last appearance in the ring.
When Trinidad retired after the Winky Wright fight, it wasn't because Trinidad the fighter wanted to retire. It was because Trinidad the father felt that he was slipping in the corner and that he wasn't able to give his son what he needed.
Tito comes out of retirement almost 3 years later to fight Roy Jones Jr. at a catch weight of 170. This goes quite underlooked, but Tito trained for this fight. He came in prepared, and if he was fighting a borderline contender at super middle and not Roy Jones Jr., whom was in peak condition during his post-Harvard comeback saga, I would say he would have won. Tito was fighting like Tito. He had good pop on his shots, he was landing nice combinations, and caught Roy with some shots he really didn't see coming.
Okay, kids, 30-27, 3 rounds to nothing. Tito Trinidad, very little movement. Roy's right there, and Tito's smacking him with the hardest shots, just like you see right there. And this is what's scoring the points. Tito Trinidad's winning this fight.
It is quite disheartening to hear the man came in just for a paycheck and didn't care, because that wasn't the case at all. The man fought his ass off.
Of all the results that experts have envisioned and discussed and contemplated for this fight, the one that got perhaps no play at all was the notion of Trinidad by decision over Jones.
Trinidad's looking very sharp. I'm very impressed with him so far. His punches are accurate. He looks a lot like the Trinidad of old.
In this comparison here, we're looking at Zab at his absolute peak as the undisputed welterweight champion, making his first defense against Cosme Rivera. Just absolutely dominated him. Power, speed, counter-punching, and effective aggression. This is a Judah everyone loved. After the Mayweather and Cotto fight, we saw Judah try to become more of a boxer and was starting to look more like Pernell Whitaker. But the problem with Judah is he did not know when to pull the trigger on both offense and defense, and it really hurt him in the long run. He spent too much time being overly defensive, waiting around and looking for holes that don't exist, when the judo of old would have found those holes just through using effective aggression. 5 years later from when he made that transition, we saw a bit of both worlds against Danny Garcia. This was Judo's last and final crack at the title. The fight was for Danny's WBA and WBC junior welterweight title. The match didn't really start off well for Judo. Judo was doing exactly what I was mentioning earlier, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do against Danny. After Judo got knocked down, that really seemed to wake him up. One, this is in your backyard of Brooklyn. This is most likely your last chance to win a belt. Better yet, 2 belts at the same time. The start of the 10th round, we didn't see Zab sometimes Super Judo. We saw Zab Super Judo. Doubling up on the jab, followed up with a straight, muscling Danny, bullying him around. This is the Judo everyone was accustomed to seeing, and for 2 rounds we saw briefly what a prime Judo may have done to Danny Garcia.
Jab and the left hand here by Judo. Good stiff jab by Judo.
Just before we started to see PAVLIK get really good, Bernard Hopkins pretty much sent whatever promise shown in his previous fights to the shadow realm of what could have been.
It's just that he gets hit too hard and too often by somebody who really knows what he's doing.
The middleweight champion of the world.
Look at the mixture of body shots, uppercuts, left hooks, right crosses, tremendous jab.
Seems that every punch he lands stays with his opponent throughout the
It's the
fight.
lesser opponent. No fight is nothing Kelly PAVLIK can't do against an opponent like that, and there's knockdown number 3.
After losing the title to Sergio Martinez in 2010, PAVLIK took time off and made one more run at a title under a new trainer, Robert Garcia. Under Garcia, PAVLIK was looking like the PAVLIK before the career-changing boxing lesson Hopkins gave him. And by the end of 2012, PAVLIK earned a shot to fight Andre Ward for his title in January 2013. The fight was unfortunately canceled due to Ward's shoulder. And if you watch Joe Rogan's podcast, where he talks to Ward fought injured for a bulk of his career, and it was at that point he should take time off and get that surgery before it's too late. Unfortunately, it happened at the worst time. Now, according to Robert Garcia in recent interviews about this topic, PAVLIK wanted to drop out because he feared for his health being injured by Ward to not being fully dedicated in training. So mutually, this matchup was cursed from the start. Not much to explain here. Meldrick Taylor, pre-Chavez, was a beast and was seen to be the next Sugar Ray Leonard. Now, what HBO made it seem like after the Chavez fight, Taylor was completely finished. Well, not really. He went on to regain the title in the new weight class of welterweight to make the worst decision of his career and jump up to junior middle and fight Terry Norris, then to lose his title against Chris Espana 5 months later, which was another bad decision, fighting so close in between each other after a brutal loss. Before I start about Taylor's comeback, which led to his final title shot, Taylor never had a good defense. His offense was his defense. He had a very short reach for his weight class, which he was always at a disadvantage, especially with the style he had. Junior welterweight was that perfect division for him, which having such a disadvantage didn't hinder him. It's almost like Yuriorkis Gamboa. The best of Gamboa was at featherweight. When he moved up to super feather in 2012, it was just downhill from there. He was at a size disadvantage practically every fight. 65 arm reach in a division where 68 and higher is the average. So back on track here. Taylor made a move back down to junior welterweight, and well, guess what? He looked like the Taylor we were all accustomed to seeing. But unfortunately, this is the last images we'll see of Taylor in this form. This is what I say to be Oscar's absolute peak, and that was against David Kamau. He completely blew him out in 2 rounds. Fast forward, after a heartbreaking loss against Bernard Hopkins, many saw that Oscar was out of his prime and also distracted because his new responsibilities as a boxing promoter. He was immediately jumping into a fight with WBC junior middleweight champion Ricardo Mayorga. Oscar had not been in the ring for almost 2 years. What definitely motivated Oscar to be on absolute point was Mayorga's incredibly offensive behavior promoting the fight. Pause for a second. There's always that one person, based on their character alone, you just refuse to lose to. Though, now for me, I refuse to catch an L against a guy in Halo 2 named Little Moist Sausage. I kid you not, photos or it never happened. So anyway, Oscar makes a big statement in the first round, dropping Mayorga.
A lot of loopholes. He's going to try to beat him with short punches.
Then to follow up, giving him one of the worst beatings in his career. Oscar will get the TKO victory in the 6th round. The best, most sharpest Sergio was against 37-0 Sergey Zinzurek. It was an absolute masterful performance. We gotta remember, Sergio picked up boxing rather late in his career and started to really bloom into the fighter he is remembered as by his mid-30s. After winning his most career-defining fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. for the title he was wrongfully stripped of years prior, Martinez finally had a homecoming fight in Argentina. This was his first fight there since 2002. His opponent was undefeated Martin Murray. Prior to the Murray fight, Martinez had partially torn his meniscus, breakage in the femur behind the knee, a broken tibia cartilage, distension of the ligaments and runner's knee, and he had a post-operation infection before the fight. Dude was broken before his biggest day, but the show must go on. Martinez got the homecoming welcome he deserved in front of 50,000 fans who gathered in the rain to support him. Sergio started the fight well. In the middle rounds, Murray really put it on him and equaled the scorecards, dropping him in the 8th round. Sergio begins to rally in the 10th and slips. He took a while to get up, and you know that knee was bothering him. Like the champion Sergio is, he began to take over the 11th and finished the fight strong. Also to note that Martinez broke his hand earlier in the match. Incredibly close fight, but you must take the title from the champion and fight those final rounds. Murray did not fight those rounds at all, and Martinez, the great finisher he is, finished strong. Harold Letterman scored the fight 114-113, which I agree on, and all the judges scored it 115-112, in which, depending on how you scored the swing rounds, I could see that too. We all know how dominant Mike Tyson was, so I don't know. Let's use his last fight before the Buster Douglas match, and that was against Carl Williams. Carl Williams, fairly underrated heavyweight, beated some notable names. Some believe he got robbed by a prime Larry Holmes. I didn't watch the fight, so I'm just taking their word for it. Tough guy on a 5-win streak, including a big win against Trevor Berbick and an IBF title elimination. Tyson obliterates him like the punch-out version of himself in 1 minute. Fast forward to 2003, post Lennox Lewis Tyson was against Clifford E. This is the fight where the infamous broken back interview came from. Now, Tyson did suffer from a serious sciatica injury years back. Tyson wasn't lying. He did say spinal, and the sciatica nerve is part of your lower spine. So y'all may laugh and meme him trying to explain what he had, but that injury is no joke, and it really did hinder his movements on a bad night. But this night against Clifford, he was using a lot more head movement, rolling a lot lower than usual. So that makes me assume he didn't do anything during training camp to re-aggravate it. So on that night, we saw the best of an out of prime Mike Tyson. The best James Toney will have to be his performance against the great Mike McCallum in their rematch. Everything he did wrong in the first fight, he corrected, and was able to get the more convincing majority decision victory. Now Toney suffers from a traumatic brain injury to the pituitary gland. This is a very important gland. It helps produce many of the body's hormones that can affect your energy levels. In Toney's case, it was affecting his testosterone levels. He was producing the amount of testosterone a child would produce at the age of 6 and 7 years old. He was also low in IGF-1, which is a growth hormone. It affects his ability to focus, memory, lose weight, and gain strength. Post-Holyfield fight, training was an absolute struggle for Toney, let alone going 12 rounds. To pick a fight during that period in Toney's career where he was really able to shine and look like shades of himself we remember, I'll have to pick his first fight with Samuel Peter. He had not looked like this since the Holyfield fight. He was incredibly sharp and was able to maintain his stamina for the most part of the fight. Unfortunately, he didn't do enough in the championship rounds and lost to Peter by a narrow split decision.
And Peter may be running out of gas. Look at this series of shots by...
And on top of that, this is Boxing Greats in and out of their primes comparison. For another installment, be sure to like and share. And if you're new, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram for more video updates, news, memes, whatever. I regularly post mixes of music I would use in my videos on SoundCloud, so be sure to also tune in for that. I'm Alpha Sancho, and I'm out.